For the fourth year in a row, we've seen it clearly. There's a growing hunger in Orlando. Mature Christian creatives are craving more than just expression. They're craving community, collaboration, and inroads to share the love of Christ. Artists shape culture. They speak into hearts where words often fail. And when those artists are grounded in Christ, they carry a unique voice, one that can shift conversations and reveal gospel truths in powerful, unexpected ways. At Arts Fellowship Orlando, we're creating space for these voices to rise, a place for Christian artists to be equipped to collaborate and to create original, compelling works together for the glory of God. Join us in empowering, listening, and raising them up as influencers of Christ here in Orlando.
Artists shape culture. They speak into hearts where words often fail. They carry a unique voice. Like these ancient words penned by a Hebrew poet found in a book of songs in the Bible. Deep calls to deep at the roar of your waterfalls. Your breakers and your waves have washed over me. The poet is overwhelmed and swept under by the chaos and brokenness of life. And from these deep waters, the poet dares to offer his disillusioned why to the divine artist, believing and hoping that his tears of lament would be his pathway into an experience with a living God who possesses unimaginable depths of compassion. This lament, this cry was a kind of worship offered from the depths of his disillusioned soul. Deep calls to deep, and in that mysterious place of sorrow and longing, God does not turn away. He draws near. In our contemporary world, where we lack the language and a practice of lament, we struggle to see the beauty of a person who wrestles with God over suffering and brokenness. We struggle to see the beauty of a person who has the courage to name that this world was not as it was meant to be. Biblical lament gives voice to grief and to protest. Lament is the people of the divine artist planting seeds of hope in the soil of despair, trusting that the divine artist is with them in the depths and still at work, bringing beauty from ashes. It is a vulnerable cry to God to meet us in the darkness with his compassionate embrace. Jesus, the divine artist enfleshed, showed us that lament was the only true response of faith to the brokenness and fallenness in the world. It provides the only trustworthy bridge to God across the deep seismic quaking of our souls. Today, you will journey with the artists as they showcase their creative renderings of deep calls to deep. Through music, story, and song, the artists invite you into the deep waters of their journeys with the divine artist, resulting in increasing intimacy and hope. This is Deep Calls to Deep. My name is Lisa Brockman. I am a co-founder and serve on the leadership team of Arts Fellowship Orlando, and I serve with co-MC Karen Thigpen. Let's welcome her to the stage. The opening video was crafted by the brilliant creative team at Stockworth Studios. They captured the faces of the many artists who have journeyed with us over the last 4 years. Tonight, we're honored to feature 6 artists. They're all from our 2025 cohort, each presenting an original work that represents and gives you a window into their journey of art and faith.
Over the past 6 months, they have met in community, read and studied theology, interacted with the spiritual and artistic mentors who have journeyed with them and challenged them in their artistic process. But most importantly, these artists have spent hours and hours and hours in their respective studios with the hope of creating an original work that reveals something about God and their faith in Him, and doing so in an unconventional and an unexpected way. Our first artist today is Dr. Andrew Minear, and he is a choral conductor and composer, presenting an original work, and followed by him will be Mary Grace Burkett, a graphic designer and illustrated. Please join us in meeting Andrew now.
My name is Andrew Minear, and I'm the founding artistic and executive director of Orlando Sings and the director of music ministry at All Saints Episcopal Church of Winter Park. I'm drawn to choral music because it is an extremely powerful pathway for human transformation. As we examine the words, we explore all the facets of the human condition. We join together and then we share this out into a world that so desperately needs it. Music has always been the answer for my faith. Whether it's as a little kid singing in the choir at church or singing hymns with my family, it's the reason I'm here today. Music has been the source of my growth in faith. It's the reason why I am the man that I am today. I've spent my entire career as a conductor interpreting other people's works, and I'm just so thankful that I have the privilege tonight to share a work that I've created, a deep and authentic exploration of faith through this wonderful and powerful art form of choral music. Tonight, for my original project, we're going to share a brand new choral work that I have composed for children's choir and adult choir. It's in 3 parts, beginning with the formation of faith as children, crisis of faith as adults, and ultimately fulfillment through hope and love. I hope that everyone encounters this work will think deeply about their own faith journeys and will walk out of the room with a renewed sense of faith and hope and love and that peace that passes all understanding. A famed opera director once said, "Vocal music is an attempt to take the whole human being and project it into space. It is the ultimate gesture of getting outside of yourself. You take a part of you that is most inward, most personal, most private, and you hurl it out into space. You project it as far as you can. This gesture of opening this whole region of the body results in an enormous spiritual release and is felt by others with tremendous impact." The composition I offer you tonight is just that, a gesture to get out of myself and, in a sense, hurl what is most precious to me out into the space where you are right now. If you're unfamiliar with choral music, it is a medium of art that conveys deep spiritual truths through a collective power of the human voice, creating a shared experience that is both personal and communal. It connects performers to one another, but also to those who listen. Choral music reflects our shared human experience and has the ability to provide comfort, catharsis, and at times, hearing choral music provides space to encounter the divine. The work you are about to hear will be performed in 3 movements and incorporate voices from multiple generations. The first movement, Teach Us, Lord, to Love, reflects the purity of a child's faith by first learning that love is expressed through simple daily acts. The second movement, Let All Who Seek, explores doubt, suffering, and longing. This movement begins as a lament, a time of mourning, but shifts to a statement of acceptance, and finally becomes a prayer for perseverance through difficulty and trials that seem unbearable. The final movement, God is Love, brings a sense of resolution to the cycle. Listen for the harmonies of triumph built on 3-note chords that echo the triad of faith, hope, and love. so often invoked by Paul in his letters to the early church. The faith that gives us strength to persevere, hope to begin again, and the love we experience when we abide in the Lord. This work reflects a journey that I have been on, one that has brought me through seasons of delight and innocence, through tragedy and loss and disappointment, and eventually, now, into a season of healing and wholeness and hope. Through it all, I have found comfort and strength by trusting in God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The emotional heart of this work is summed up in the line, "We die to ourselves to live in the Lord." Take note when you hear it, as we crack open our hearts and the heavens with a glorious ascending major chord. It's a concept that I have found deeply moving in my own life. And now, through this composition, I hope to invite others to experience this very transformation. It's the idea that through the struggles and suffering we face, that something beautiful and redemptive can emerge. It's a peace that comes only after the struggle. And it's a peace that truly surpasses all understanding. continue seeking until they find. Blessed are those who have not seen, yet in their hearts have come to believe.
My name is Mary Grace Burkett. I'm from Orlando, Florida, and I'm a graphic designer. What's drawn me to graphic design is that as we walk through our everyday, we come across things that have been designed. And so my responsibility and opportunity as a designer is to convey truth and beauty in those designs, and that's what I'm really passionate about. For my original project, I'm telling the story of my Appalachian Trail through hike. I spent 5.5 months walking from Georgia to Maine, and so for my book that I'm creating, I'm going to tell the story of that journey. I'm going to use type, illustration, photography, and layout to convey the struggles that I walked through, but also the great joys that I got to experience. This creative process has actually been a challenge as I am used to creating and designing things for other people, but in this project I've gotten to design a book that tells my own story. And so the unexpected blessing in this process has been getting to reflect the really hard challenges that I walked through on the Appalachian Trail. And I've gotten to put those challenges into a story that talks about the way that I needed to rely on God for strength in some really challenging circumstances. When I think about Deep Calls to Deep, it reminds me of the quiet of the trail when I was walking and didn't know what was ahead of me, around each turn or what the next day held. But what I did know is that God would go before me and walk beside me, and He did. And that's what I'm excited to tell you about as I share with you my original work tonight.
I'm sure you're wondering, why in the world would she want to walk from Georgia to Maine? Well, before I answer that question, I first want to ask you if there's ever been a moment when you realized it was now or never to pursue a dream that you'd had for years. I had that moment. I grew up loving the outdoors and loving adventure, and so after the idea of through hiking the Appalachian Trail crossed my mind, it never really left. And for a long time, I thought, that's maybe a little crazy, and I don't know if it's really possible. But one day it dawned on me that I was pretty free in that season of life, and what was stopping me from at least attempting to through hike the Appalachian Trail. So I took a year to research, plan, and save, and on March 25th, 2024, I set out with my friend Abby to walk 2,200 miles. I knew I would need truth to return to on a challenging journey like this. And so in a little waterproof journal that I carried with me, I kept these words from Psalm 18 that say, "It is God who arms me with strength and makes my way perfect. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to stand on the heights." This was the hope that I clung to, that God would be my strength and that He would guide my path. For the Arts Fellowship, I've created a book to tell my story. It's over 100 pages long, but today I'm going to give you a glimpse into 4 of the designs that I illustrated that told my story in a way that just words or just photos couldn't quite do. So here's my first spread. It shows the gear that I packed, but it also shows the conflicting way that I know I can rely on God, and yet the painstaking efforts I take to be prepared just in case. I packed a rain jacket and rain pants. I had a rain cover for my backpack, hoping that these things would keep me dry. I paid meticulous attention to every single ounce that I packed. I even cut off the end of my toothbrush, hoping that that would save me some. All of this to feel like I was somewhat in control. So here I put my gear into a nice, neat rectangle, trying to prove that I could possibly contain the unexpected. But as I spent days walking in the rain, what I found is that even the most expensive gear was never going to save me. At the start, I was tempted to believe that the more meticulously I prepared, the more likely I would be to succeed or survive. But the nature of living outside means there's no guarantee of what the next day or the next turn will hold. I would need something else to rely on. So remember, I was living on the trail for 5.5 months with a tent as my primary shelter. Trying to predict, avoid, and endure the rain is a large part of this lifestyle. So in this next spread, I've illustrated the second day on trail, and as you can see, it's already raining. The ground, as pictured here, wasn't really this light, and the path wasn't really this smooth, and the rain wasn't really coming down in thick gray patches like this. But I've illustrated it that way because that's what it felt like, and that's what I remember. The rain was heavy and cold. It was almost paralyzing. And I know there was more than these 6 trees around me, but I was so laser focused on looking for the next white blaze that this is really all I remember. A white blaze is that white rectangle you see on the tree, and it's what marked all 2,200 miles of the trail. Oh. And in a small way, these blazes were showing me the way that was perfect. I knew that with each white blaze that I passed, that I was one step closer to my destination of Maine. In this next illustration, I've drawn the McAfee Knob, which is the most photographed place on the AT, And as you can see, the morning we were there, he had a pretty unreal sunrise. In this illustration, I focused on the brilliant colors and the expansive way that the sky amazed me. In that moment, I forgot about my wet clothes, I forgot about my sore feet, I forgot about how tired I was of eating freeze-dried food, I forgot about looking for the next white marker. In that moment, God's glory was the blaze right in front of me, and I knew that I was exactly where he wanted me. It was moments like these when the sky was dry and clear and vibrant that reminded me that on the days, the storms, that the rain would eventually come to an end. I was reminded that God is faithful to be near to me in storms and to carry me through challenging seasons. Some days I searched hard for his presence, like I did for the blaze in the middle of the storm, but on other days his glory was undeniable and obvious, like it was in the morning sunrise. But I know that in all of these conditions, he was near. So you probably expected that on a journey like this, I would experience breathtaking beauty. But do you know what some of the most unexpected beauty that I found was? It was in the faces of the kind, generous people that were offering us hospitality. Thru hikers call these people trail angels. Trail angels comfort weary hikers with homemade food, cold drinks, and they just lend a hand. So you can imagine how it would absolutely make our day to come around the corner and see one of these smiley faces. You may have imagined that the trail would be lonely, but that was not the case. Here I created a collage of the characters that we came across, both familiar faces and strangers. These people helped us in a way I couldn't imagine, and here I have depicted not exactly what they gave us or what they did for us, but instead the sense of community that we experienced in an unknown place with people we were unlikely to ever see again. Each of these spaces bears the image of God as someone simply committed to loving their neighbor. And it was through their generosity that it was clear to me how God was meeting me through his people in a way that I didn't expect. Well, on August 30th, we finally reached the terminus of the Appalachian Trail after 159 days. This illustration shows the rocky trail that led to the final peak of Mount Katahdin, and I wish I could say it was smooth, but that was not the case for any of the trail. The terrain was rough with jagged rocks and boulders, and still we were focused on looking for that next white blaze. But finally here, you see our joy and delight at the peak as we are in disbelief that we really did it. With our hands outstretched, backpacks by the side, no trekking poles in our hands, we were in disbelief. Having endured the hike of a lifetime, our illustrative selves here show the childlike joy that's available to all of us when we take a risk and step out into adventure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Grace, and thank you, Andrew. As a ministry of First Presbyterian Church of Orlando, our mission is to cultivate a community of Christian creatives through mentorship, fellowship, and unique presentation opportunities to give hope of Christ to a culture in need. Prior to today, all of these artists participated in 3 works in progress showcases where they had the chance to practice their presentation skills and share what they were working on with intimate audiences, revealing their hopes for their work, their inspiration, and what they were struggling with. It gave audience members a rare privilege into hearing into the hearts of artists. And 2 years ago, the next artist who will present did just that. He was a member of our 2023 fellowship class, and sculptor Dan Crosby will now do an encore presentation of his work, Decreased. Please welcome Dan Crosby.
Like so many of us, from a very young age, I've been captivated by stories. Tales of adventure and bravery. Tales of sacrifice and loss. Tales of death and peril. These stories can be imaginary or true. Everything from Robin Hood and Treasure Island, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, to the true stories of the world and history and those of the Bible. They're all filled with flawed men and women who are caught in something bigger than themselves. When I read these stories, the faces of these people, these characters, are never hard for me to imagine. And it's with this foundation that I had a vision of a sculpture of a man's face, both strong and gentle. But on closer inspection, there were hairline cracks and worn edges. As the bust turned in the vision, I recognized that there was areas of the head, the neck, and the shoulders that were missing, exposing internally a structure that was also breaking down. This was not just a monument, but a monument in decay. That the words of a biblical wild man, John the Baptist, came to me. He must increase, and I must decrease. John's sole purpose was pointing the way to Jesus Christ, preparing the way for the kingdom to come and his king, and being at peace with his small part. It was that aspect that stopped me in my tracks, that part of the description of John that struck me. It was now clear to me this vision of this monument in decay was John himself. And not just John in the desert proclaiming the gospel, but him in prison awaiting his death. Even here, I can see that his expression was that of peace and contentment. In my creative process, stories and narratives intercept with my exploration of the elements of life, of growth and decay, and also humankind's desire to leave a name or a legacy. These concepts continue to draw me in. They challenge me as well as inspire me. And this exploration interests me because it's often where I find myself, caught in a bigger story with a desire to leave my own mark, trying to prove my worth through the work of my hands. But my hands are my tools, and so with them I create. This was a holy commission, one that set me free. I don't create to prove anything, but to simply tell a story, to pause and reflect, to gently remind us to pause and reflect, to not allow ourselves to be overcome by the noise of a loud and anxious world, but to quietly and thoughtfully consider the past. In my story, when I create, I tend to work with a certain amount of calculations, creating drawings and small studies first, and then armatures and planning my next steps. Then there's a burst of energy where clay is quickly added to the armature and form takes shape. This tends to be my favorite part, as I work quickly to put the clay where it needs to go. Surface planes and contours, shape and structure are my biggest concern here. Then the harder and more prayerful work of patiently addressing the details. The muscles in the neck, the gentle squint in the eye, slight hint of a smile, and the seemingly endless locks of hair. Moving from there, mold making and test casting start, using different methods with concrete and chemicals for varying results, all with care, a sort of loose chemistry. And even in that space, I allow myself to prayerfully engage, to ask questions, to be open to answers, and to simply be with God and his servant. I'm now asking the question, Why? Why and how was John so content with becoming less? So at peace with his seemingly small part? This question cuts to my heart because its answer seemed to be what goes against everything that the world tells us to desire, and even what my own heart desires. In John, I'm confronted with a beautiful truth and mystery that I want you to experience with me. And it's just this. John did not care about leaving a name for himself. His sole focus was elevating Christ and his good news. And this news is big. And it's why I think I chose to make him so big. I honestly think John would laugh, or I laugh, thinking that John would hate the sculpture. An image of him larger than life. But I hope he would understand what was at work. And I hope it catches you and draws you in for closer consideration, inviting you to think about our bigger place in this large story, recognizing the deep call of our greater artist to see his reality, that the beauty can be seen in the broken, the worn out, to allow shape and texture and the physical form of a simple man in a big story, to see that through weakness, God displays his strength. In our brokenness, we see his wholeness. In our foolishness, there is his wisdom. And even in our sin, the triumph of his grace and love. This is decreased an interpretation of John the Baptist.
Thank you, Dan. Following today's program, all of the visual art presented in the showcase will be available for viewing, and you'll have a chance to meet all of the artists during a meet and greet. So please plan to join us after that. Now I'd like to take a moment to recognize some very important people and sponsors that have made this program possible. First, I would like to recognize the leadership at First Presbyterian Church of Orlando for their vision and for their recognition of the important role that artists play in a society. Secondly, I would like to recognize the Heart of the City Foundation for their leadership and vision to supply each artist in each cohort with a $5,000 scholarship to assist them in the creation of this original work. If you are an officer or a trustee of the Heart of the City Foundation, would you please stand for a moment and let us give you some applause? There we have some. Maybe they're paying for the evening. Next, I would like to recognize our marquee sponsors, the Symonds Family Foundation and the Sterchi Family, who ensured we could have our production at this beautiful theater. And secondly, I'd like to thank Michael Kelley and Lawson Law Firm, as well as Jim and Peen Hardy for their support. Finally, join me in thanking Stockworth Studios for their creative genius in producing all of the videos you will see today. Now it's time to turn our attention to our next artist, Aretha Rodney-McDonald, who is a spoken word poet and songwriter. And following her presentation will be a 15-minute intermission. Please join me in meeting Aretha.
My name is Aretha Rodney-McDonald. I'm from Davenport, Florida, and my artistic discipline is spoken word poetry. So what drew me to my specific artistic discipline is my love for creativity. I created my first song at the age of 8. I love to create, whether that's through song or productions, or I just love creating. So to be able to create in a form of spoken word poetry was very beautiful to me, and I just fell in love with it. What makes this art form so powerful is the vulnerability that is attached to creating. Because as a creative, I always say, I put my heart to pen, my pen to paper. And the power that comes with vulnerability is that someone might need what you have to say. And that's what makes this art form so powerful. So my original project will be a spoken word poem, which consists of musical components, which includes 3 vocalists, a guitar player, and a piano player. We will all come together on one stage to portray my message of surrender. This project tells the story of my journey to a true surrender, what I thought surrender looked like to actually what surrender was. Now that I'm here, I'm using this project to call to others and letting them know the importance of coming back to the Lord and giving him a true surrender.
I was a church baby. Church babies are babies born into the church life, and that is all they know. That means church every Sunday morning and every Sunday night, multiple midweek services. Let's just say I was at church all the time. Church was a routine that was familiar, from childhood to adulthood. But after a while, I discovered that it is possible to be present and yet far from his presence. What does that mean for me? It means my relationship with Christ was confined to the 4 walls of the church. It means I had a relationship more with this routine than I did with God. My relationship was more about what he can give and less about what I was willing to offer. See, I straddled the fence for a while, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But in the year 2020, at the height of the COVID epidemic, like many of us, I was one of those individuals who was extremely impacted. My health was in critical condition, along with my newborn baby girl. In that moment, life for both of us felt uncertain. But being a church baby, I knew who to call. In pain, but desperate, I made my way to my knees on a hospital floor. And I made a vow to the Lord that if he gave me just one more chance, I'll no longer get lost in a routine, but it will be my priority to build a true relationship with him. See, this project will take you on a journey from what I thought surrender looked like to that vulnerable moment in a hospital room, which changed the trajectory of my life. My faith walk is no longer a Sunday morning routine, but is now an intentional relationship with my God, my Father. See, this journey will be portrayed in the form of spoken word poetry, accompanied by musical elements, from instruments to songs. I normally call this type of art a song piece. See, spoken word poetry is a form of poetry that is meant to be performed rather than read on a page. It uses rhymes, repetition, slang, and wordplay. See, the scripture states we should love the Lord thy God with all our heart. The biblical truth that I would love to convey here today is that the Lord desires 100%, 99.5% just won't do. Here is these 2 words.
Recited in my mom's favorite hymnal. Sunday morning sightings of
hands raised with tear stains while musical instruments played a distinctive wave that ushered the essence of God's divine presence. See, these two words, this. Has the ability to pierce through the compounds of heaven. Blissful tunes with lyrical fumes that would take God's breath away. Tugging at his heartstrings like the picking of my acoustic. Cause see, surrender just so happens to be his love language. A dialect in which I knew, but solely based on my views from the pew, weakened knees. Planted in the ground like a feeble tree. Yielding, needing a source of light. Needing the sun, but not the one that goes down at the approach of night. See, surrender resembled a body posture, a song composure, musical aesthetic that triggers emotional moments, goosebumps making its grand appearance, hair follicles rendering standing ovation. See, these two words meant nothing more to me than a Sunday morning routine. A call and response which signified service was almost done. The altar, filled with emotional beings while I patiently await my confirmation reservation for brunch. See, these two words, this I, surrender, is more like an anthem to the faith. A faith in which God, in his sovereignty, grants a dust-composed being the ability to choose. And like dust, constantly getting swept up, clinging to things I shouldn't, dwelling in spaces not destined like boxes, confined, limiting my access to divine purpose by pursuing a life with the absence of Christ. Unbeknownst to me, a box checked by church just wouldn't suffice, and yet Christ was never too far. Watching as I digest society's lukewarm stuffed recipes of self-sufficiency with keys to getting ahead, with no appetite, a hunger for his daily bread. I tend to wonder, how many thorns did I place back on his head as he yearned for a heart as pure as water? All I cared to offer was a bitter, acidic substance like vinegar. Get it?
Got it.
Good. See, his only request was this organ that beats beneath my chest. Two words, clinging to the exhale of my breath, 4 syllables to resuscitate this walking dead. Could see the wages of my sin placed tombstones above my head, and in red, she loved Jesus, but she loved me more. She loved me more. She loved me more. Projected on my TV screen as I watched my favorite movie scene. A warrior, bruised, with no other choice but to yield. Knees bent, heart racing, as his storyline meets a tragic end. A scene multiple times I've seen, just never knew at some point the scene would be my off-screen reality. A warrior, hoping my storyline doesn't meet a tragic end, because I'm yet to become the version of myself God knew before he formed me in my mother's womb. So here I am on this battlefield, I mean this hospital room, with hands raised and tear stains while instruments played a distinctive wave. Not one that ushered the essence of God's divine presence, but one that measured the rhythm of this heart. See, I rendered everything but this heart.
And I knew in this moment, if I saw Jesus, his response will simply be, depart. So here I am on this battlefield with no other choice but to yield. Weakened knees, planted in the ground like a feeble tree, yielding, needing a source of life, needing just one more chance to get it right, dear God. Come see about me. Grant me this victory in spite of my hypocrisy. See, I vow to love you wholeheartedly, setting my mind on things above, no longer neglecting you, my first love. See, these 2 words will be my daily posture. Dear God, I surrender. See, I traded my grave clothes for heavenly robe. Now I'm a recipient of streets of gold, owned to the God who saved my soul, whom in his sovereignty took this dust-composed being and made her whole. So my response from now till eternity will simply be these 2 words.
Welcome back. So often when we are talking about the Arts Fellowship, people ask us how this entire thing got started, and it's actually a very interesting story. Back in 2021, the original founders, Lisa Brockman, Matt Guilford, and I were all working independently, but equally feeling a burden to lift up the arts in Orlando, and we were brought together by what now seems like a divine appointment.
The 3 of us met together one evening in February of 2021 to explore if there was synergy between our shared passion for artists and the arts in Orlando and uplifting artists in Orlando. Matt had been working in the area of arts, media, and entertainment as a missionary for decades, even working with international artists. I had been a vocational missionary for 30 years and had begun working with artists in Orlando and around the world. And Karen had begun theological work and had a passion to give voice to artists and help them in creating original works.
So we shared our ideas and we synthesized them, and we presented a concept and a vision to the leadership at First Presbyterian Church and then to the Heart of the City Foundation. And we were met with resounding support, and we were charged to find out if, in fact, in Orlando, there was a community of Christ-following artists that would want to work together and create original works like you're seeing tonight. And now, 4 years later, we have the answer, yes, indeed. There is a population of artists, and they are eager to share their work, and there's also audiences eager to see what they've created. So as you hear our story, you might be thinking that you know an artist who would love to be a part of this community, or perhaps you yourself are that artist, or perhaps you're just an advocate for the arts. If so, get in touch with us following the program. We are always looking for professional mentors for artists, places to host our Works in Progress showcases, and financial partners to ensure we can host showcases like this one.
Our next presenter is Naomi Williams. She's a member of our 2025 cohort. and she is going to take you into the intersection of art and faith through the art of filmmaking.
Hi, I'm Naomi Williams. I live in Sanford, Florida, and I'm a photographer and filmmaker, and I focus on producing and directing. I'm drawn to filmmaking due to all the different elements that I get to utilize and play with and get immersed in. So it's not only the story and writing, it's the cinematography, the camera angles, the lighting, it's sound, it's music. At the heart of filmmaking, I found it to be the art of relationships. I'm working on a film about shepherding. I've read about that topic so many times throughout scripture, but I didn't really know what a shepherd actually does. And through learning and researching and embarking on this journey, I've come to grow in my faith. Hearing the duties and the tasks and what a shepherd actually goes through for caring for their sheep has deepened my appreciation for the Lord Jesus Christ. Throughout this whole project, I've gotten to experience Jesus being my good shepherd. There are times where I've been exhausted. He's given me strength. I didn't know where to go. He's shown me the way. I've needed encouragement and just joy and laughter, and he's provided that. Working on this project has taught me about the intersection of art and faith, that the two always really collide when it comes to being an artist. And I don't need to split myself up to fit one or the other. I can bring in both elements, and that actually creates a deeper, richer, an original work of art. And it just is such a blessing that I get to do that, to point others to the Lord, to point others to the light of Christ, and to encourage them with their own walk with the Lord.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Psalm 23, verses 1 through 4. These may be familiar words. If you've grown up in the church, you know this psalm. And if you haven't, it's likely you've heard them. But perhaps this is the first time you're hearing them. I love this psalm because I love the idea and the imagery of resting beside cool waters. I love the imagery of green pastures. And the idea that someone can lead me there and restore my soul, it's almost too wonderful to even imagine. And so I go back to this psalm over and over and over again. And as I pondered this poem, I found myself asking, what does a shepherd do? And why do sheep need one? And why do sheep wander away? That psalm was written by an ancient king of Israel, David, and he knew that sheep needed a shepherd. And thinking about that drew me to explore this topic more. It made me wonder, why is there so much shepherd imagery in the Bible? Psalm 23 isn't the only place, and there are other biblical characters too. Abraham, Jacob, Moses, and Rachel are all people whose lives are chronicled like epic tales, who were also shepherds. And it's not only them, Jesus, the cornerstone of the biblical story, is known as the Good Shepherd. The art of great filmmaking, as you probably know, lends itself through telling stories through moving pictures, leveraging the power of sweeping scenery, memorable and complex characters, and a conflict every moviegoer hopes will end in resolution. This documentary has sweeping scenery, has what I hope you'll find to be complex and memorable characters, and offers a resolution to a conflict I think we all struggle with. I started out on a quest to understand why Jesus is called the Good Shepherd. But in the end, as it often happens when I try to understand him, I came to a better understanding of myself and why I so desperately need a shepherd. Please enjoy Goodness Follows.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall lack nothing. It's gonna make me cry. I'm sorry. I was afraid of that. It's like the first thing out of my mouth and I'm crying. Take two. How would I describe my personal bond? Can I describe it as unique? It's not like kind of bond with any of the other animals, really. To an outsider, it's going to look like a flock of sheep, but they really do have different personalities. They've got different voices, which at this point, you know, I could distinguish without looking at them.
There's so much wisdom in their design from their four stomachs. They don't have teeth on the top, and their bottom teeth are how they use to chew cud. They're rectangular pupils, which give them a huge field of vision because they're prey animals. So when you really dig into their features, they are delicate little creatures, and God's creativity just shines.
Okay, so this is peanut hay. They're getting a little bit of supplements of peanut hay, which is slightly higher in protein. So because we have some very pregnant sheep and some nursing sheep, they need a little bit of extra. And you know, there's not a whole lot of pasture right now, so the 4 buckets is so that everybody has a chance to get some.
Are sheep dumb? Sheep are absolutely not dumb.
That is not a word that would come up in any of my descriptors of them. Willful, you know, sometimes. They can be a little impatient, you know, but not dumb as it stands, like a lack of intelligence, I guess, if that's what people are referring to.
I would invite anyone to spend a few hours with a sheep, observing them, and I would think it would be hard to believe they would walk away thinking that dumb is an adjective to describe sheep.
Only place I think I've heard that is like in a church setting or from other Christians. And it's really interesting, and I think it comes from the passage maybe about wandering off, and it's like, oh, sheep are so dumb, they just wander off all the time. If they're going to wander off, it's for a reason. It's for a purpose, and typically it's because they see something that they want. What they've done is taken their eyes off the shepherd, and they have wandered towards something else. That has a purpose behind it. You know, it's not because they couldn't follow, they wanted something different.
An area might look really appealing, but it might be filled with poisonous plants, or there might be a predator lurking around. So the shepherd knows what's best and what's safest, not the sheep. The sheep have to trust that the shepherd has their best interests at heart.
You know, I know where they're headed. I have prepared the field for them. I have prepared that place. But only the sheep who follow are going to get there.
And go ahead.
So I got into filmmaking when I was really young. My parents had one of those camcorders where you put the little tape in and you get to just, have fun. Like there's no one's telling you how to, record. So I just had a blast. I wanted to capture everything because I got a lot of joy from watching what I recorded back. I also loved watching behind-the-scenes videos on films. To be honest, if a DVD didn't have bonus features, I didn't want it. I wanted to see, how film was made. Later on, went to school for video production and photography, and I loved it. It gave me such joy. Growing up, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition and had to learn how to do things differently. That even played a part in how I do filmmaking differently. And somewhere along the lines, growing up, fear came in, doubt came in. Like, can you really do this? Like, do you really have what it takes? Are your ideas really unique? It distracted me from focusing on what the Lord had put in my heart, which was to do filmmaking. Once fear and doubt settled in, I just kind of started to drift. And I was so far from what the Lord had actually called me to do.
Shortcuts have consequences, and they're always bad and never worth it. And just like, taking shortcuts in life, they're real-world consequences, and there's certainly spiritual consequences of sin and displeasing God.
I just left behind the things that actually brought me joy, things that I actually loved. Wandering has looked like for me has been a lot of isolation, and my friends were far away. I really miss, my friends. I didn't really have people who really saw me, and took the time to encourage me. And yeah, it's just really not good to be alone.
Sheep and a lot of these animals are really skilled at hiding when they're sick. They're prey animals, so they'll wait till the last minute to let you know something's wrong.
During the time of wandering, it totally affected my health physically. I gave up things that really gave me joy and energy, and, it cost me. I took my eyes off the Lord, and I was more focused on other people's approval. I was more focused on trying to calm and quiet the voices of fear and shame and doubt, and I was doing it on my own instead of seeing those things as an invitation to run to the Good Shepherd. I thought I had to be the one to find good and green pastures.
A shepherd knows each member of the flock, and he takes the time to plan for their well-being and plan for what's best for them, and he takes pains to protect them. An area might look really appealing, but it might be filled with poisonous plants, or there might be a predator lurking around. So the shepherd knows what's best and what's safest, not the sheep. The sheep have to trust that the shepherd has their best interests at heart. Like, I have to trust that the shepherd of my soul has my best interests at heart. When I see the sheep contented, it is very rewarding, because I know the work that I have put into creating an environment, a pasture, whatever, that allows them the comfort and security to lay down. And it's also rewarding because we have put a lot of effort into providing for them nutritionally in terms of growing our own plants that God has designed to be nourishing, his creatures.
The Good Shepherd's character is so good that he is with us even in our wandering. To know that he loves us so much that he won't leave us in the area where it's dry and burnt and unhealthy and it's dangerous is amazing. It really is amazing. I just find that so beautiful, that the Lord would use these things to refresh me and to renew me. The journey has still been hard. Like, things are still challenging for me right now. Like, I'm still actually recovering from how I was physically feeling. I'm still trying to make friends, but it's felt so much better. It's felt so much lighter.
It's one thing to read the parable of the lost sheep, but it now comes to life as I imagine Ritzy or Goldfish or Teddy Graham wandering off. We, of course, would drop everything to go after them. There's just so many aspects to a shepherd and shepherding care that I now have experiential knowledge of instead of just theoretical knowledge.
It was just a sweet, calm presence that reminded me that I was not alone. And when I would read his word and read through verses like Ezekiel 34, and I'm reading about this imagery of the Lord being a shepherd, Psalm 23, Psalm 28, John chapter 10, it just began to come alive more to me. There's a joy in my heart knowing that the Lord didn't leave me where I was, and that he cared so much to walk with me and to rescue me from myself, from my own sin and disobedience. And when I think about that, it gives me a peace.
Beautiful shepherd, you have made a way. You are the potter.
Our next artist is another AFO alum, and Rebecca Fox was in our inaugural class. She is a creative writer, and her creative storytelling explores the intersections of life, faith, doubt, and wonder, all dashed with magic. Following Rebecca, we will hear from 2025 Art Fellow Amanda Cortes. We got it. Well, one day when I was about 11 years old, I was yet again curled up with a book beside the window in my family living room. The day was overcast and a real gray, sleepy sort of day. The book was called Tree and Leaf by J.R.R. Tolkien, and it was completely out of my depth. I absolutely needed a break. My brain was stretching, so I set the book down and I just looked out of the window. The lawn was green from the spring rain. There was no wind in the branches of the oak trees. It was a view I had taken in 1,000 times. And then, just when I wasn't expecting it, something changed. The only way I can describe it to you today is that suddenly I woke up. I saw the sky, the tree, that faint impression of the sun behind the clouds, as if I was seeing them for the very first time, as if a window had just opened up that I was looking through. I was suddenly aware of just how alive that tree was, and I felt like if I could just lean a little closer, I would actually see beyond all those clouds. And what I would see there would be something really, really beautiful. You might call that experience my first time recognizing the transcendent, that there is so much more than meets the eye. I felt all of this in one sharp instant, like I'd been plunged into cold water and then it was gone. And actually, until right here, right now, I haven't talked to a lot of people about this, but I've held on to the pearl of that moment for almost 20 years. As fleeting as that glimpse was, it's like it woke a hunger in me for that deeper, higher, transcendent beauty. Have you ever had an experience like that? Do you have any memories that stir? I was relieved years later to discover that I was not alone in this experience, because at least C.S. Lewis writes about it a lot. And in fact, he calls it the shock of joy. What he means by that, the shock of joy, is a deep, soul-stirring longing, an experience of being alive to the deep desires that call all of us humans to that ultimate reality for which we've always been meant. As a Christian, I believe this hunger for transcendence is really a hunger for the presence of God. There are times in life when we are shocked to find that presence, that beauty, is not far away and remote like maybe we thought, but instead it's right at hand, as near as our next breath. If we actually lived and moved around the world like we believed that, I think everything would change for us. As a person and as an artist, I have been chasing after that vision ever since. I've come to believe that great art helps me, helps all of us to stay awake to those revelation experiences of God's nearness, beauty, and power. So when I write, this is what I'm seeking for myself and for my reader. When I write, I often tell stories that have a twist of the fantastic, a ghostly piano prodigy, a day that the sun doesn't rise, a man whose only memory is of clouds. Because I find that by living inside these fantastical stories for just a time, it actually clears away the cobwebs that gather over my eyes so easily. And when I come back, my imagination is tuned to be able to witness and recognize those miraculous, in-breaking moments when they do come. And I can see the reality that is around us all the time, just beyond the clouds, if only we would be ready to behold it. I'm going to share just the beginning of one of those stories with you today. It's called The Girl Who Cried Diamonds. There once was a girl whose tears were diamonds. The gift or curse, however you want to call it, had been with the girl since birth. She came into the world a little blue, her lungs not quite awake. The midwife pounded the girl's back to stimulate her cry, while the girl's mother craned to watch. Once the baby gathered up a burst of air and let out a howl to make up for her slow beginning, the midwife set the child back in her mother's arms. But when the mother moved to brush the girl's tears aside, she nearly cut herself on the glittering shard that balanced on her baby's cheek. She plucked the tear free. She let it roll into the bowl of her palm. As she watched, a second tear bubbled between the baby's thick lashes, and it left a faint scratch. "What is this?" the mother said. She held the tear up to the light. It sparked and flared. The midwife gasped. Doctors were called, tests were run, there were eye exams and full body scans. Nothing explained the cascade of crystals. According to the tests, all was normal. And yet precious stones came trickling out of the baby's eyes each time she was hungry or sleepy or in need of a change. "We'll keep an eye on it," said some doctors. "She's likely to grow out of it," said others. So the young mother took her daughter home, along with a stack of bills for the tests that offered no answers. Raising a daughter who cried diamonds was not easy. The girl's crib was cluttered with solid tears and had to be constantly monitored so she wouldn't take one into her mouth and choke. Once, a diamond slipped unnoticed down the drain while she was taking a bath, and a plumber had to be called. When the girl bumped her head or skinned her knee, diamonds. When she watched the Saturday morning cartoons and laughed till her belly ached and her eyes brimmed, diamonds. When deep summer thunderstorms rattled through the valley, more diamonds. It was unnerving to find that her child's sorrow and pain and confusion held weight, to find that it could be rolled around in her hands or lifted up to the light to refract prismatic. The girl's mother did her best to collect them. She developed a system of dropping the stones into mason jars and empty tin cans. Each time she filled one, she wrapped a label around it, scribbled the date, and then shoved it deep beneath her bed. She felt she was becoming a dragon, curled above the hoard of her daughter's emotions night after night. Now, one afternoon, the girl woke early from her nap and wandered into the kitchen. Her mother was crouched over that pile of bills and a calculator, and she didn't hear the small girl's steps across the carpet. When her mother released a weighted exhale, the girl scrambled into her lap, ready to gather her mother's tears. But when the girl touched her mother's shining cheeks, her fingers came away damp. The tears shivered, then melted, and just then, her mother seemed magical. That night in her bed, the girl imagined what it would be like to cry like her mother. She pictured rivers streaming through her eyes, and further back, those rivers branching into tributaries and streams and little creeks and trickles all the way back to a bubbling source, bright and bursting. She imagined how it would be to be so full of water, of sorrow and sensation that effervesced. Would she ripple and curl like beach waves? Would she make a sloshing sound when she walked? The girl fell asleep, wishing for water. Thank you.
My name is Amanda Cortes. I'm from Oviedo, Florida, and my artistic discipline is painting and sculpture. Well, I think of painting as a moment that we can be invited into. Its stillness is one of its strengths, where you can contemplate the moment that the painter captures. Its very stillness can really draw the person to contemplate the themes, the movement, the color, and that sense of beauty or that sense of mystery that can be captured in a painting, I don't think can be captured in any other medium quite like it. Thinking about Psalm 42 and the way that it paralleled in so many ways the development of my project and the way the theme of deep calls to deep was embedded there from the start was such a joy, and it was such a consolation. So from the origins of the project to now, it's gone through so many changes, and part of that has been the collaborative process, the mentorship. It's gone through so much love and prayer, not just from my own hands, but from the people around me, my fellows, my mentors, and that's something that I'm just so excited to share with you guys tonight.
It is an absolute joy to be here with you today and to debut my two new original paintings that together I have titled The Imminent Eternal. I mentioned in that video that painting as an art form has a powerful ability to offer a moment of stillness to its viewers, which is a rare gift in the busyness of our modern day. And through that stillness, painting provides the artist with a chance to invite viewers into the mystery of a moment, to contemplate things in a way that few art forms can offer through many translucent layers of dirt, crushed rocks, and oil, the ingredients of oil paint. Matter can lead us into mystery. In the late spring of last year, having just survived a New England winter where the vibrantly birth of nature is deeply impressive, the outside world was brimming with new life. I found myself interiorly stuck in cold, muddied waters. It was amidst a profound sorrow, feelings of betrayal and loss, that I began to study the book of Genesis. As the first book in the Bible, it tells us about first things, about creation, about the fall, and about the origins of man. I knew that when I began this project, I wanted to start by considering what it meant that Adam was formed from the earth. The first painting of two is titled The First, and it is inspired by Genesis 2:7. And the Lord God formed man from the slime of the earth and breathed into him the breath of life, and he became a living soul. I chose to depict a figure, half submerged in mud and murky water. Part of his torso and legs are still covered in the slime. Along his body and beside the mud are bits of gold and small flowers symbolizing the beauty and provision of the created order. Almost out of frame is also a winding, scaly body, representing the temptation of man. The upper left corner, which is the brightest part of the composition, depicts water on the light surface, dappled and reflective, signifying both grace, divine illumination, as well as man's imperfect understandings of the ways of God. The illumined water laps against the head of Adam, in whose face I wanted to capture both the maturity and the burdens of a man, as well as the innocence and exhilaration of a child. His face depicts wonder. If you look closely, there's many colors in his eyes, and there's quite a bit of weight on his brow, signifying the weight of existence that burdens him even in his joy. The unclothed figure's hand reaches up and directionally what is the darkest part of the composition. Also in that upper right corner are the roots of a tree cleaving to the ground around Adam. Here his hand reaches, symbolizing his desire, his freedom, and also the act of faith. As I contemplated this first man, his belovedness, his hope, his own futility, I also found myself thinking of his fulfillment. The second painting of this duology is titled "And the Last," and it is inspired by chapter 22 of the book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible. Within that chapter, in the most beautiful language, the Garden of Eden is described as being restored. The wondrous abundance of the city of God, reading, "And night shall be no more. They shall not need the light of the lamp nor the light of the sun, because the Lord God shall enlighten them, and they shall reign forever and ever." I was inspired by this to depict in the lower right corner an illuminated figure reaching down towards the shore in the muddy banks, towards the dark water before him, calling back to the first painting with its dark blues, purples, and greens. But here the figure divides the dark of the composition from the light. The figure represents Jesus Christ, his hand outstretched, reaching, and waiting. Beside the figure, the water is both bright white and bright red, representing his divine mercy through the blood and water that flowed from his side at his crucifixion. Just behind this figure are the roots of a strong tree, which is my own interpretation of the tree of life, which yields fruit every month, its leaves a source of healing, its trunk surging skyward, and its fruitful abundance making up the middle of the composition. Here again, the tree of life represents Jesus himself, the fulfillment and the restoration of creation. The tree's roots touch the river as it moves into the depth of the composition, the water flowing towards the source of the river. Utilizing both paint and gold leaf, I composed here an interpretation of the city of God. Surrounded by colorful, bright light, the city is golden and abundant, itself part of the tree of life. These paintings, side by side, offer us a still moment to consider the mystery of those first and last things. In painting them, I saw myself in Adam, acknowledging the murkiness of my surroundings, my need as well as my own freedom to reach in darkness, in faith, towards the waiting hand of God. In painting them, I found myself comforted to consider that from the beginning of all things, our Lord had been there, waiting for me, Revelation 22 not only describes the restored Eden, but it also describes Jesus as the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the one who began but also finishes my story. I titled these paintings The Imminent Eternal because while they depict scenes, specific scenes, I hoped to capture in them both something beyond just those scenes. Eternity about to happen. That is, that the source of each and every one of our desires is a person. Christ is the light that illuminates my darkness, and his is the hand of God reaching in this moment, throughout all of creation, continuously inviting us into the mystery of eternal love. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And thank you for joining us today. It has been such a privilege to have you with us. If your story was touched or you found your story weaving into a story of one of the artists, we'd encourage you to reach out to them and to share with them the impact they had on you or where you felt resonance. It's so encouraging for them to see how their work moves in another person's heart.
Our final presentation today will be with saxophonist Emmanuel Garilus. And like the others, he brings us to a powerful moment when he found himself at the intersection of art and faith.
As you journey with Emmanuel in his deep unto deep story, may you catch a glimpse of the beauty of the divine artist who is with us in the darkness and who is offering deepening intimacy and hope. Emmanuel.
My name is Emmanuel Garilus. I'm originally from Haiti, living now in Central Florida, and I am a saxophonist. I think what draws me most to my artistic discipline, the saxophone, is connecting with others, is being able to reach new people, meet new people, and develop meaningful connections. So I grew up in a musical family. My dad is actually a choir director, and my mom sings in the praise and worship team. I remember one day I was sitting in a church, and there was a guy with a bright blue suit and a funny looking hat. He went on the stage and played his heart out, and that moment there really inspired me, really captivated me to start learning the saxophone. And the saxophone for me has been a way to really express myself, really express my thoughts, really express my ideas. It's a way for me to communicate with others. It's a way for me to express my soul and be a source of comfort and healing whenever I go on stage and perform. My original project is a song based on Revelation 5, 12, 13 that speaks about this beautiful divine worship that is taking place in heaven. So through my song tonight, I'm hoping that the audience gets inspired and that they go on and develop and strengthen their relationship with God.
The song that I will play for you tonight is about the triumphant but unexpected peace that comes from following Jesus wherever he leads me. As you heard, I grew up in Haiti, a country that can be quite unpredictable. However, I grew up around predictable routines composed of the 3 L's. L'école, la caille, l'église. School, home, church. And those are all the places I spent my time growing up. And it was a beautiful way to grow up. And it was peaceful. It was peaceful because there was always a clear plan. Go to school, get a great job that helps others, and always put God first. So you can imagine the stress I felt after graduating college and being forced to go to medical school, and then getting the distinct sense that I should be pursuing music. You see, music has always been an important part of my life. But as I got older, I realized that I loved it more than just a hobby. I felt like it was part of my soul, part of what I was born to do. This piece that you will hear tonight was a heavenly download, a gift from God. It was given to me during the time of prayer and meditation, and I believe it was a response to me choosing to pursue music full-time. The words of the melody states, "All the glory, all the honor, all the praise belongs to you, my King." These words reflect the sentiments from the book of Revelation, the final book of the Bible, where all creation rejoices over the sovereignty of our Lord. As you will notice, this song intentionally begins with a soothing and gentle melody that reflects the peace that overwhelms me and all believers when we have chosen the path that God has laid out for us. The bridge will start at a low volume and gradually build up to an all-out, joyful interchange between the saxophone and the drums. This section is intended to highlight elements of Haitian rhythms, but also reflect the ways, unexpected ways, in which God can lead us to His peace. So while I begin on a predictable path of healing through medicine, I have since chosen to share the healing love of Christ through music. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure I present to you my King. Thank you.